Revolve Renewable Energy just announced it has received a US $3.4 million milestone project payment from ENGIE related to the sale of its utility-scale renewable power project it first announced a little over a year ago. CEO Steve Dalton is here to explain in detail the relevance of the news. I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. It's Wednesday, June the 12th. Please remember this is neither recommendation or investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Steve, great to have you back. Congrats on the news. The news release is a little complicated. It gets into some accounting, revenue recognition, which always seems to spin people's heads a little bit. Can you just outline the news and what it means to Revolve?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Probably take you back to the overall transaction, just maybe to remind people of it. So that these were two projects that we sold to ENGIE in January last year, basically 1,250 megawatts, solar and storage projects located in Arizona. And as part of the kind of transaction structure, there was a number of milestones which are due to come payable. Obviously, on completion of the transaction, we received, or at least received cash of $2 million up front. Last August, then we completed the first milestone for one of the projects, the Parker project, which was around interconnection studies, without kind of getting into too much detail around it. And we received $850,000 for that payment, or for that milestone. And the milestone we announced just this week was the same milestone, except this time for the BOUS project, which was the much larger project. It's 1,000 megawatts.
And sorry, when you say the same milestone, the same interconnection milestone.
Okay. Yeah, correct. There's effectively four milestones or four payments related to the sale, which were on completion. That was the $2 million payment. There was a milestone around interconnection studies. So when we received the next interconnection study for each of the projects, notice to proceed, which is effectively when they start construction and then commissioning of the project. So this latest one, like you say, was around this interconnection study, which we received for the BOUS project, and that triggered this $3.4 million payment, which we just received.
All right. Okay, that seems good. So that essentially, A, you got cash, which is good. B, the project's moving forward, and the interconnection study, I guess, was positive and constructive, and now you're moving on to notice to proceed to build. That's the next milestone related to these.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, obviously the project's under development. We had done a certain amount of work to kind of de-risk the projects before we sold them to ENGIE. Obviously, based on that work, they were happy to buy them. Obviously, the structure, some of the milestones was around these kind of interconnection studies, just to, I guess, from ENGIE's perspective, to make sure that the interconnection studies still show what they want. Obviously, the fact that they've continued with the projects, paid the milestone, I think is indicative that everything is as expected and as they were looking for. And like you say, the next kind of milestone from our perspective is notice to proceed. There's still obviously some development work to be done. We're not involved in that. ENGIE's kind of development team are running the projects now, so it's over to them in terms of bringing them forward. But I think a fantastic milestone. Regardless, these are two pretty sizable projects, particularly for a company the size of ours. I think the BOUS project alone is, I haven't looked at the list, but it's certainly one of the largest projects being developed for the California market. It's probably 1.2-1.3 billion of capex just for that project alone. So these are sizable projects. And
sorry, just to clarify, you're not writing that $1.2 billion check. ENGIE is doing that. You're handing it off to them. You've brought it this far. They take it, and they're paying you for the work you've essentially done and the risk you've taken on to date.
Exactly. Yeah. No, definitely not writing that check. That's for sure. So yeah, I mean, essentially since we sold the projects last January, we haven't had anything to do with them. It's the ENGIE team who are kind of running the development of the projects. Obviously, we have a vested interest because we have these milestones linked to the progression of the project, and so we're obviously following the project closely.
In the news release, there's just talk about some revenue recognition and that, and I don't want to get too into accounting things, but essentially, revenue recognition is you don't necessarily recognize the revenue once you actually receive the check. Some other or events happen where you can say, okay, now it's you recognize this as revenue. Is that essentially what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So if you look at the first payment we received when we sold the projects last year, we received $2 million in cash. We actually only booked, I think it was around $850,000 of revenue.
Yeah,
So we had to defer the rest of that revenue. So now that we've hit this particular milestone, we're able to recognize the revenue this quarter. So effectively, what's happening is we're getting $3.4 million of cash. That's pretty clear. But
yeah,
on top of that, we're able to recognize a further 960 odd thousand of revenue. So effectively,
yeah.
this quarter from that deal, we're booking, just over $4 million of revenue.
Okay, so the cash payment that you received, that will all be recognized in this quarter, or is that going to some of that going to be deferred?
And no, the intention is that will be all booked this quarter as well.
Okay, so this is going to be a big revenue quarter for you guys.
Correct.
Can you give us like the as you were saying, NG, it's in their hands to get it to notice to proceed and the further milestones. What would a reasonable time frame be from now until notice to proceed? Is that like potentially a 6 month, a 3 month, a 12 month kind of wait? Can you give any kind of indication to that?
Hard to give any indication, I'll be honest with you, Martin. I mean, as like I said, the project is not within our kind of control from a developer perspective, so hard to give any indication. And kind of as soon as you start giving indications of dates, you kind of hold yourself hostage to them. So I think, yeah, we're probably going to still keep with that line in terms of we're not providing kind of indications of when we'd like to, or when they're expected to come on notice to proceed. Obviously, we had done a fair amount of work before we had sold them.
Yeah,
We've now sold them 18 months, so you can kind of start to get some sense as we continue to hit the milestones, that the projects are moving along.
yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to give a specific timeline.
Yeah. And so from those projects you sold, just doing the basic math for us, how much cash have you received from those projects in total to date?
Yeah, so we've received 6.25 million in total to date.
Okay.
And what we had indicated is like we weren't able to give, let's say, full details of the breakdown of the transaction itself for the milestones, but what we have been able to say probably consistently since we've done the deal was, the valuation that we sold the projects at was consistent with where we have indicated in our investor presentation. That was in a range of $40,000 to $50,000 per megawatt. 1,250 megawatts can get you to a kind of deal size of between 50 to 62.5 million in total. We've received 6.25 million, so investors can kind of do the math and get some sense of potential value that's still to accrue to the company, which is pretty significant considering where our current market cap sits in terms of cash versus market value.
Would it be, and I guess I'm being a little sneaky here, but on the notice to completion, it would be reasonable to expect that there could be another milestone payment on that, and upon commissioning, another milestone payment on that. Those would be reasonable times for those types of payments?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's what we indicated. Like they're the two remaining milestones. So like we
Yeah,
obviously haven't indicated what amounts are due at those. We're not going to be able to, unfortunately. But I think
yeah,
like investors can, like I said, get some sense as to kind of still the accrued value that has to come to us. So
yeah,
between those two milestones for those two projects, you can any which way you cut it, there's still very significant amounts for a company like us, particularly in cash terms.
yeah,
So, I think it's a fantastic milestone for us, really, we feel underpins the value of what we're doing on the development side. Obviously, all of this sits outside of our existing pipeline and our existing operating assets.
yeah,
And so when you kind of throw in 11 megawatts of operating assets, a 3 gigawatt pipeline, all the things we spoke about probably last week in terms of the Mexican market and different things going on. It's yeah, I think when you add it all up, there's a huge amount of, I think, inherent value in what we're doing.
Okay, well, that's great. Is there anything else you want to highlight before we wrap it up?
No, I mean that was it. I mean, it's like I said, it's a fairly simple release in one way, and that 3.4 million cash received. The deferred revenue, I think, is hopefully a bit easier for people to understand now, and the milestones are pretty clear in terms of next steps for those two projects. So I think overall, it's really happy with the progress made in the two projects.
Excellent. Steve, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed on this good news. Congratulations on hitting another milestone there. Have a good
No
day, and I
problem.
look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it always, Martin. Thanks.